You've most likely heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but have you ever heard of the hierarchy of team needs? If not, then you're not going to want to miss this episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast because you're going to learn how to build a cohesive team to unlock new growth together in the age of AI.
You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm James Robert Lay, founder and CEO of the Digital Growth Institute, where we're on a mission to help financial brands stop losing loans and deposits by guiding them through the Banking on Digital Growth program. Today's episode is part of the Exponential Insights series. And before we get into today's conversation, I want to invite you to grab a copy of my new book, my number one best-selling book, Banking on Change. Not only can you grab a copy of this book for you and your team when you visit www.bankingonchange.com, you'll also find a few extra bonuses that will further guide you and your team through the complexity of exponential change as we continue to move further into the age of AI. Speaking about teams and speaking about books, I'm also excited to share with you today's conversation with Scott Albrecht. Scott is the author of the new book, the co-author of the new book, The Hierarchy of Team Needs. Now, this is a very short book, but it packs a lot of practical knowledge. It packs a lot of practical wisdom from Scott's leadership and team building experience as the VP of Learning and Development at ServiceStar Consulting. And then he's cross-referencing that with the science of motivation. Even better, Scott's book, The Hierarchy of Team Needs, provides you with actionable steps that you can apply today so that you can begin building a cohesive team while empowering employee autonomy and growth together. Welcome to the show, Scott. It is so good to share time with you today.
It's a great day to be here. Thanks for having me on, James Robert Lay.
Absolutely. And before we get into your new book, Hierarchy of Team Needs, what is good in your world right now, personally or professionally? It's your pick to get started on a positive note.
I'm going personally. My kids are all healthy, and when you have four, dude, they're never all healthy. So I'll take my blessings there. Yeah. How about you, personally or professionally?
Well, just getting back from a very busy week on the road, and had some really good time with my kids. Now, you mentioned four. What are your kids' ages?
3 through 13, 2 girls, 2 boys. And it's always a party. You don't have to go to a birthday party. Just come to my house. Albrecht House the party's always live here. So
the party's included.
Upstairs.
So we're right there with you. We've got everyone just aged up too. So 14, 12, 10, or almost 10, and 8. And boy, girl is our birth order. So you're right.
You and I are very similar. Very similar.
You don't have to go to the party.
Good distribution.
Exactly. Now, I think if you think about like this idea of kids on the personal front, the same is true on the professional front as a leader. It's like we have a team at home. We also have teams through the work that we're doing in a professional setting. And you recently published a new book, The Hierarchy of Team Needs, with Dr. Elliott and Jardin. And I'm curious, why did y'all write this book and why now?
Yeah, very good question. The book's creation came from my brain, and I'm not the smartest guy in the world. Probably not the best way to sell a book. But I was thinking over some coffee in Phoenix. I want you to think about that for a second. Coffee in Phoenix, not the first place you think about grabbing a coffee, but I was sitting there with a chief lending officer for a credit union out there. And I said, what if you took Maslow's hierarchy of needs concepts and you combined them with Patrick Lenciosci's 5 dysfunctions of a team? Would it work? And so we just sat there, we just kind of pieced it together, and I said, okay, all right, so it works, but then there's got to be more. So I called up my friend at Miami University, Dr. Elliott Jardine, and I said, hey, what do you know about neuroscience? And he's like, well, I'm an associate professor of neuroscience, so let's go. And so we took his brain and just this idea and concept of applied pressure at work. And we really put it to the test. And we pulled up some research that really showed a case study for stress and applied stress in the workforce that I don't think a lot of people are talking about right now. So why now? Is one of the questions you asked me.
Yeah.
I think we're so scared of stressing our employees out, right? Burnout rates are at an all-time high. Mental health is an issue that needs to be addressed. This book does not counter that, doesn't say mental health isn't a problem, but it does take care of when you overvalue one thing and you undervalue another thing, which is, I think we're undervaluing the importance of applied pressure at work.
What do you mean by that? Undervaluing the importance of applied pressure.
Well, when when you have short staffedness, it's hard to get people.
Yeah.
And then you get the people in the door, and in your internal employee surveys, you keep on getting this disengaged workforce response, right? Gallup keeps on
Mm-hmm.
putting out the numbers that we have the most disengagement in the workplace ever. And then they say, hey, why? Why is this the case? And people are burnt out and this and that. It leads a manager to believe, without science or research, that maybe I need to back up off my team. Maybe I don't need to apply pressure. Maybe the best thing I could do is just maybe remove myself from talking about minimum expectations, remove myself from talking about what it looks like to be professional. These are internal conversations. They'd never say this out loud, but they take the paycheck of being a manager, they take the title of being a manager, but they negate the team building aspects of being a manager. And what gets left behind is the team that they're hired to manage.
So when you look at this idea of disengagement and you think about the people and the human aspect, how is the work that you do as VP of Learning and Development at Service Star Consulting, how has that influenced your thinking and writing? I mean, you connect this back to this coffee conversation. What have you seen along the way that has really been like, I'm starting to see these patterns and there's an opportunity here that we might not be thinking about at a macro level?
Yeah, my wife, her family suffers from uh, at the end of the life, you have dementia problems, or maybe you have Alzheimer's. And some of the research out there says that if you buy a sauna and you sauna every day or for 5 minutes a day, that decreases your chance of having kind of that happen at the end of your life. And so that's really kind of where this little idea came from, which was, so what is a sauna? Well, I go into a sauna to apply pressure on my entire system. It actually says you shouldn't go into a sauna if you're stressed out. The whole point of a sauna is to apply stress to your body to give it a different response, a better response, a pro health response. And even in the Marine Corps, my dad's an Army Special Forces Ranger. They would put you in situations of applied stress, and they would teach you how to work in that applied stress to be able to make you a better performer under stress. One of the things that they teach professional athletes is a breathing technique.
Mm,
Your mind's kind of an interesting thing. It will focus on what it wants to focus on, but you can teach your mind to focus on breathing in a sauna to get better results. And it actually, that practice of breathing in a sauna prepares you for when you're on Team USA and you're training to go over to Latvia and ice fish in a country you've never been in before. And it's snowing and the Baltic Sea snow is hitting your face, and you're running from one side of the field to the other, and your heart's racing, you're gasping for breath, and you realize, okay, this is a sauna moment. And so just like athletes prepare, just like the military prepares with applied stress, this application of pressure in the workplace has meaning. Like there's science that backs up that with more pressure, more gets done. And with less pressure, less gets done. There's science that backs up that pressure at every stage of the hierarchy is important to actually have a team be realized as a self-actualized team. We're winning every day. It's like a well-oiled machine. You can kind of take your hands off as a manager. So it's funny. We started the conversation with some managers think they need to back up off their team. when really it's through applied pressure that allows you to create autonomy for your team, where you can actually back up off the minimum expectations that are required on a team when you're at the apex of the hierarchy.
Well, it sounds like what you're talking about is resiliency here. And if I think about your sauna example, I'm going to go to the opposite end of the temperature spectrum. Let's talk cold plunge therapy. And there's a gentleman, Wim Hof. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Wim Hof. You're talking
Yeah.
about
Oh, yeah.
breathing. I've actually been employing the Wim Hof method now myself for almost 18 months. I have an autoimmune condition, and it just so happens that I've been able to find really good management through breath work, and then the cold therapy, because back to your point, the mind and focus, it it builds up the uh, adaptation muscle, the AQ, the adaptability quotient, which, if you think about everything that we've experienced from 2020 to now, uh, we one could make an argument there's been more change within the last 4 years or so than what many of us have experienced within a decade, yet alone perhaps even over the course of a career for those that have been working for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
When you look at this hierarchy of team needs, what are they, practically speaking? Because you reference
Yeah.
Maslow here.
So let's build on the resiliency model. So if you can imagine, it's a podcast, so maybe close your eyes. If you're driving, don't close your eyes. But a hierarchy is typically a triangle, right? And on the very bottom of the triangle is the base, the foundation, if you will. See, our mission at Service Star, we help credit unions by inspiring transformational change. That mission that I've committed to memory is something that is at the base of every hierarchy of team needs. It's your purpose statement. It's your why. If you're a big fan of Simon Sinek, what what actually creates this hierarchy, what this hierarchy actually stands on, is a foundation of just missional leadership. And so, if you don't have that in place, the hierarchy doesn't stand. So that in and of itself is the beginning. Then let's build the hierarchy. So, with the mission of your team, doesn't have to be the actual organization.
I want to pause you
It
real
could be your
fast. I want to
yeah,
pause you
sure, yeah.
before we get too far ahead, because I think the foundation really is key, and I don't want to gloss over this, because it is easy to think, oh, it's mission. We talk about that, we hear about that, but that, as you write, it's the cornerstone, and mission
Yeah.
is the cornerstone. Then you get into motivation, creates momentum, and then autonomy accommodates pressure. Those are three interlocking keys here to the hierarchy of team needs. Let's just go back to mission as a cornerstone and pause. Why must mission be here? And what happens if, for example, as we've done in this conversation, what if we gloss over that and we fail to really address that in our journey of growth using the hierarchy of team needs?
Yeah, so many organizations, when I say, what's your mission statement, they go searching on their website. Some of them don't even have it on their website. This has got to be a rallying cry. This has got to be something that, when we say you have to be adaptable, you employee have to change your behaviors. I know, really comfortable to do it the way you did it yesterday. Tomorrow you got to do it differently. Employees become disengaged without mission when you don't actually say, no, we're going to do the same thing you did yesterday. We're just going to do it better tomorrow, because we have a purpose, we have meaning, we have relevance in our lives. And this change that I'm asking you to do is a change that gets us closer to the meaning and the relevance that we were chasing yesterday. We can just get there a lot faster tomorrow. And so I need you to change this process. I need you to change this procedure. See, the applied pressure that creates that momentum, that that measured motivation, is one where the brain can connect the past and where we're going to the future through just the words the leader communicates with. Gallup did a survey and a study that said, if you just talk about the mission 10% more, you can increase productivity by 4.4%, and you can reduce turnover by 8.1% just by talking about the mission more. Whether you call it a mission or a vision or a purpose statement, whatever you call it, talking about why it is we belong together as a team is crucial.
That is super fascinating. And this is, I think, where the neuroscience comes back into this, because I think it's very easy to forget why we're doing what we're doing to begin with in the first place. It becomes rote, it becomes repeatable, it becomes to a degree automated, whether it's AI doing the automation or we as the human beings have just automated whatever it is, and we're not being mindful of why we're doing this in the first place. So there is actual proof coming from Gallup here that by being mindful of the words and the way that we communicate can have a positive influence to establish a strong foundation that we can build this hierarchy of team needs on. So let's go ahead and do that, because you have this framework that at the very bottom you've got these two basic needs. You've got trust and you've got honest feedback. Let's start there. What do you mean by trust and honest feedback, and why are these basic needs?
I was on a call with credit unions the other day, and somebody's name was Janny. And I said, Johnny, do you have a question? She unmuted and she's like, oh, no, I didn't have a question. But did you just call me Johnny? And as a leader who's trying to build authority, who has maybe responsibility over somebody's learning journey in that process, my knee-jerk reaction would be something like, oh, maybe my microphone picked up Johnny, but I actually said Janny. That's kind of what my knee-jerk reaction was. When we go there, when we go to a place of authenticity, because I said Johnny, because we want to protect our own image. We want to be reflected as a superhero in the eyes of our employees. We want to be someone who maybe they call us the beast, or that person doesn't even bleed, because I gotta get these people to follow the way that I need them to go. And so I can't showcase who I really am. When we put up those walls of invulnerability between us and our employees, that is the absolute demolisher of them feeling like they can come to us about anything, right? They don't feel comfortable in a meeting to provide that honest feedback. That if you don't know whether or not this is a problem for you and your team, when does the actual meeting happen? Does it happen when you're expressing the new idea that you have? Is that when you get the real feedback, or does it happen in the meeting after the meeting? In the real meeting, the people just nod their head like bobbleheads. Yeah, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea, boss. And at the water cooler, they say that was the worst idea I've ever heard in my entire life. What is he smoking? Like,
Well, let's pause on this point of vulnerability here. Why is that so hard? Do you feel in today's working world to show up and just be real? Like, and I've really had to work on this myself in full vulnerability and full authenticity here. Like I was not always, and I'm still working on it. Like to really,
mm,
this is like I am a human being. I am flawed.
yeah,
I am still working. I'm a work in progress. There are some really great things about me. There are some things that could be even better. And let's have a conversation about both, or put all of that out there. Why is it so challenging to do that?
it's interesting because the human brain sees being perceived as a weak person as the very thing that would keep somebody from listening to you.
Mm.
When in reality, it's the flip opposite. They're not going, if they don't know you, they're not going to trust you. And if they don't trust you, they're not going to follow you. And so when you got off the phone with your wife and it was a bad conversation, like you're like, you know what? I got to compartmentalize this. I got to go to work. I got to show up, and you come in through that door and typically you're sunshine and smiles, but everyone can tell this is a different version of you coming through the door. And somebody says, hey, good morning. How are you doing today? And you say, fine. I mean, that you destroyed trust in that moment. It's better to say, you know what, just got off a hard call, but I'm going to, I'm gonna make a great effort today. Thank you for asking. Or you know what, I got 4 kids, didn't sleep very much last night, but I'm still gonna give it my all. We're gonna have a great day today. Those kind of responses build in transparency, which builds in a team member feeling comfortable coming to another imperfect human being and saying, hey, I think your idea needs work. Whereas if I try to treat my job as I can't show them my imperfections, then they're not going to show me my imperfections. I'm going to have a team full of yes people. I love the devil's advocate. I love the person who can raise their hand in a meeting and say, hey, I think this needs work.
Where does this play? Because I'm thinking like team dynamics here, but I'm also thinking, because you brought up, you know, a wife's perspective. She has been challenging me, and she works behind the scenes here. She's been challenging me to share more personal perspective in, say, a social media setting. LinkedIn is my primary uh, place of communication, and I'll be honest, it was hard at first to, you know, put that out there, put that personal perspective. But I know that that real growth comes by doing the challenging things, by doing the hard work. I'm very, very well aware of that. So I was like, after some good discussion, dialogue, and discourse with her, I said, you know what? Okay, we're going to try this. It's the worst that could happen. And what have you seen from leaders that have leaned into being disciplined to do difficult things that might make them feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, the easy road's probably not the one that you should travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this applied pressure really is all about. What I've seen is leaders that take time to team build on day one. Like you hire somebody new to your team and that changes your team by 12% or more, you've got, by the very definition, a new organism. You take vacation that first week that new hire starts. You come to HR a month later saying, hey, we got a problem with our new hire. HR should probably ask, hey, so tell me about their first week.
Mm,
And if they realize that you were gone on their first week, they should fire you. Listen,
mm,
that first day, that first week, that first kind of 90 days to kind of ramp up a new employee is the opportunity where this applied pressure of that first phase of building trust, it matters. You bring in lunch and you don't talk about work. You go and get some personality assessments. I don't care which one. Myers-Briggs. I'm a strengths finders guy. But you could do my favorite color is yellow. Like we're going to do some things to get to know each other. That's the only way we can move forward. So we're going to apply pressure at this first phase.
I
And
really,
there's so
yeah.
many credit unions that come to us. You know, we solve problems for credit unions like you do. And they're coming to us with like level 3, level 4 questions. Hey, we've got accountability problems here at our credit union. Hey, I'm sure you hear the same thing. Our people aren't selling. Um, I gotta say that's a symptom. We gotta unpack this and figure out what the actual burning problem is. And many times they're actually at level 1. They've burnt trust. They've tried to move faster than the speed of trust. And credit unions that get it spend a lot of time with new hires, spend a lot of time getting to know each other.
Well, I mean, this kind of comes down to communication. And there are 3 levels to this. When I think about the kind of a hierarchy of communication within some of my frameworks, and at the foundation of communication, it's just listening. It's just being a really good listener, going all in on people, getting really good at asking good questions, listening to what they have to say, and then just learning through observation. And then the second level is communication. The last is really influence. And but you can't have the influence unless you have the communication. And communication, that's the trust. And trust is built upon 2 things. It's what you say, it's what you do, it's words, and it's action. And if we come back to the hierarchy of team needs, so we have these basic needs: trust and honest feedback. Then we can ascend to the next level, which is psychological needs. And there is vision statement and coaching. And I'm really interested with the second point to get your perspective on that. But I want to start with and just keep layering these on top of each other.
Yeah.
Vision statement. What's the
Yeah.
opportunity here?
Yeah. So if you were following along, tracking along at the beginning of the podcast, we said the cornerstone is the mission statement. So The honest feedback is the second tier of the 5-layer cake. Okay, so first layer trust, second layer is honest feedback. In that honest feedback category, we're building in the iterative feedback loop. Me as a manager, I'm getting feedback. You as a peer, you're getting feedback. You as a subordinate, you're getting feedback. Everybody at the organization knows and is expected that we're always going to be asking for that open door for feedback as to how to improve. And the vision statement is basically 4 questions. Where do we want to be? Where are we at today? How do we get there? And how do we know that we've arrived? And from that, you can piece together a team specific vision statement that may be your mission statement. But for me and my team, it was, we're going to be the department where everybody knows your name. Now, those of you that are from James Robert Lay and I's generation, you might know that that comes from Cheers. I 100% stole it. But I thought that there's such a value of being personable at that level. Now, were we there? No. There were some things that we had to implement to get there. Simple things like removing chairs from the lobby so that when people walked into our credit union, we were standing instead of sitting. It commanded our attention so that we could greet them by name because we weren't sitting looking at emails. We were waiting for somebody to walk through the door. Little things like checking their badge if they were wearing a work badge with their name on it, or asking for their member number quickly enough in the conversation to pull up their member profile so we could use their name 3 times in the conversation. Surveys show that 75% of the time, if you use their name 3 times, they'll actually remember that you use their name. And so we tried to sprinkle that in beginning, middle, and end so that it didn't sound like we were saying James Robert Lay, James Robert Lay, James Robert Lay.
No, I agree with you, Scott. See what I did right there? No.
But we pursued perfection, knowing full well we probably would never get to the place where every member, every time, 3 times in that transaction we get there, but every day we try to get 1% better every day. And that vision statement was our rally cap that allowed for the coaching to happen, allowed for the stretch assignments, the delegations, the hey, let's redirect that behavior. What did you think you did well in that last transaction? What would you improve in the next transaction? Let's role play that. Let's coach that, right? And so that's where that applied pressure and that 4th layer of the 5-layer cake really kicks in, because now everyone's on the same page. We're all reading from the same playbook, and we're all trying to help each other. It's not just the coach coming in; the peers are saying, "Hey, how do you think I did on that last transaction?" And so it's kind of a game changer to not skip over that middle layer, which is us as a team, us as an organism. What's our rally cap? What's our rally cap statement?
Well, I want to continue down this coaching path here, because if I look at, for example, transforming behavior, human behavior, people first and foremost, they have to see things from a different perspective. And when they see different, they're going to think different. That's where training and education comes into play. That's where strategy comes into play. So you take the knowledge and then you actively apply the knowledge. And then when I work with leaders and I ask them, okay, great, you're seeing different, you're thinking different. Yes, I agree. What happens next? And they're like, well, it's kind of a rhetorical question, James Robert, but I'll bite. Of course, I'm going to act different. I'm going to be different. I'm going to do different. I'm like, really? Are you? Am I, for that matter? Because it's like we have philosophical knowledge that we need to make a change. We need to modify behavior, but then has to go deeper. What drives behavior? It's belief. And if you're going into that level of depth, so you're going to see different, you're going to think different. But if you think different, you're not going to necessarily act different. Then the question is, well, what bridges the gap between thought and action? It's feeling and it's emotion. You're going to have to feel different. The desire, the feeling, the motivation to then do different has to be greater than the desire to remain the same. Although it's a bit of a paradox here, because motivation is like a muscle. Motivation will eventually tire, and it's very easy to fall back into the old pattern, whatever that pattern was. To solve that problem, enter coaching. What's your perspective on coaching here, particularly guiding individuals and guiding teams? And now we're moving into this age of AI where change is going to get even more complex. Maybe that's a bad way to frame it. It's going to feel even more complex for, I think, a lot of individuals. It's not a right, wrong, good or bad. It's just, it's perception. How can coaching help to reduce the chaos and the conflict that individuals and teams feel? Because that's contagious. Like that feeling, that emotion would then permeate throughout, where coaching could then provide perspective that says, no, it's like, here's some clarity to increase your courage to commit to move forward with confidence. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So the range of emotions that a human being experiences in one day is over 8,000. Right. So we have we have we have a lot of things going on, and a lot of people stereotype this emotion as maybe something that's being I don't know, not good. They're neutral. Like emotions are neutral. They're chemical responses. They're scientific. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
measure emotions. If
Yep.
you put like a little neuron monitoring thing and put me through some exercise, you can measure when I get excited, when my adrenaline kicks in, when my cortisol levels increase, when I drink coffee, things happen, emotions start to fire off. And so, one of the things that's really interesting about this book is we brought in a neuroscientist to talk about like what does applied pressure look like from the inside of the brain, right? And so the amygdala is the fight, flight, or freeze, and it activates the hippocampus.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we need a little bit of a dopamine spike from a reward center using positive reinforcement. That's in coaching. But sometimes we also need the alarm, barking dog, if you will, amygdala response from a coach redirecting a behavior. Hey, that's not my minimum expectation. Like it's my minimum expectation for you to come 5 minutes early so you can make our team meeting before we open for the day. You're not meeting my minimum expectation by coming 5 minutes late because now we have to like refill you in on what we talked about. We came up with the strategy for the day. You're missed out on that. We'd love your feedback on that the next time around. So what's your plan of action? Right. And so in that coaching category, the role of accountability is putting the ball in the other person's court, not giving them solutions, but actually asking them, what's your game plan here? What are you going to do about that? My minimum expectations here, you're outside of that. What's your solution here? And by putting the ball in their court for a solution, it kind of enacts some modes of accountability that again that formulate this conscious to subconscious response. In jiu-jitsu, they put you into a certain position, right? And you got to strike in that position. Remember? And you got to do that over and over and over again until you go to sleep at night. You close your eyes and you can see the motion. They're taking the conscious and they're moving it into your subconscious. Well, coaching's no different. If I need you to do a new behavior, we need to use brain science, neuroscience, and applied pressure by setting the expectation, positively reinforcing that expectation, redirecting if it's not working quite well, so you know you're not meeting the expectation, and then at the end of the day, putting the ball in the person's court who's regularly not meeting that expectation and saying, what are you going to do differently? And then there's other accountability measures you can use as well, but that's not coaching. See, coaching's for the employee. It's not something you do to the employee. It's really what drives your employee to that fifth layer of the 5-layer cake. I'm getting hungry now, which is a team that's self-actualized. If you look at the hierarchy of human needs, self-actualization is the peak of performance. It's where you can actually drive the higher bar, where you can start raising the bar on expectations and saying, great, you met my minimum expectations. Let's move that bar up. Let's see how far we can go. It's that fifth layer is where we're pursuing perfection. We're driving at what's the highest potential that we can get out of this team. And it's fun. It's the icing.
Well,
For those of you that like icing, it's the fun layer, right? Because like what can we do as a team? What is possible as a team?
It is the art of possibility. And when you think about this idea of these multiple layers, you have the high bar. What happens when we might fall short of that? And this is where another perspective from Carol Dweck, I think, enters into the conversation of growth mindset. You've got growth mindset on one side of the equation. You've got fixed mindset on the other side. And for simplistic sake, if you're not familiar, growth mindset is you look at everything from a learning perspective, and fixed mindset is maybe rooted more into failure and scarcity. How is it possible? Maybe this is better. How can one who might be predisposed to a fixed mindset, coach as a leader, coach someone with a fixed mindset, coach them through to develop more of a growth mindset perspective so that they can be continuously striving for achieving the high bar.
This is where it's hard, right? Because they're meeting your expectation. So many managers would settle at meets expectation. Like it's the 4 out of 5 at the year-end review. Like nobody's getting fired for 4 out of 5, right? Like you met expectations. High performing teams are trying to exceed that. They're trying to, how do I exceed expectations? And to your point, in this increasingly age of change, it's becoming harder and harder to exceed expectations, right? Back in the 90s, fast, friendly, accurate. Okay. Yeah, 5 out of 5. You're doing great. You gave me all the money that I asked for. Right.
Yeah.
But the ITM you passed on the way to the teller line in 2024 could do it faster, knows that you go to 7-Eleven on Tuesdays at 2:00 p.m. and you get $10 out of that ATM and you get a $3 surcharge fee. And in the flash of an instance can tell you you could probably save some money if you got a debit card. Can your teller do that?
Right.
So high bar. Newsflash, that bar is getting a lot higher with Amazon. And, you always bring up 1994. That bar is getting so much higher. And so 1% better every day is kind of a mantra that I stole from somebody at some point in time. And it really is that pursuit of perfection. We're not there yet is a great kind of incorporation of the growth mindset, right? So if somebody says, hey, well, we're not built to do that. You counter that with, well, we're not built to do that yet. What's it going to take to get there, right? And so a growth mindset leader is looking at not limited resources, limited time, limited people. It's looking at, well, what could we use our resources for? What could we use our time for? What could we use this band of people, this band of bandits? We're a bunch of pirates, man. We're gonna go take over the world. Like, what can we do with the IT guy who's got a lot of energy and super positive, but he's in IT? Okay. Well, why couldn't he be a brand ambassador for the credit union? Well, because he's in IT. Dude, at 8:30 in the morning on a Tuesday, when I'm trying just to get my coffee, he's like, hey, how you doing? I want that guy out at the parade on Saturday. I don't care if he's in IT. He's a resource. He's a team resource that I think we could utilize in a different way. So the growth mindset is you gotta be able to look at things from a we're not there yet perspective, which really helps you move that needle higher. It is a change of your own philosophy and how you look at things.
It is. And it's sometimes it's how one small word can change the entire context of communication. We're not there yet. So there's still the possibility. Here's one idea that can help make this thing even better. And it's even as paying homage to the past that what we did is it's good, but now what can we do to take good and make it even that much better? Your IT example, as we start to wrap up here, I wanted to loop back around to something that you touched on in the book. You mentioned the idea of positivity. And you have a section on positive psychology. Uh, I'm very fascinated with this personally because I believe that we can choose the perspective. And I think it's important to say that, if you're looking and really working to take a positive perspective of life, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have a bad day. It's actually you're not going to have bad moments. You're not going to get, stuck in the dip that Seth Godin writes about in his book, The Dip, or you're not going to get trapped in the gap that Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy write about in Gap and Gain. What's the case for positive psychology in this perspective that we've been talking here today about the hierarchy of team needs?
Well, if we're going to mention authors, Ken Blanchard, right? He wrote the book Whale Done, and he cites research on a killer whale that allowed that killer whale to jump through a hoop on fire with a top hat on. And his business buddy, who's got his whole life falling apart in front of him. His team won't listen to him. His kids won't listen to him. His marriage is falling apart. It's like, wait a second. They got a 2-ton killer whale that jumped through a hoop on fire with a top hat on, and I can't even get my own employees who I pay to do the work that I pay them to do. What's actually going on? And it's a 45-minute read. It's a great read. But that entire book, I think, unpacks it pretty well, which is, listen, you're not going to get into a pool with a 2-ton killer whale and spank it. They could only use positive reinforcement to get Shamu to swim right versus left, to get Shamu to swim over the jump rope, and then continue to move the jump rope up and above the water column, so to where one day Shamu's swimming around, realizes the jump rope's outside of the water, and I think they want me to jump over the jump rope outside the water. And now you've got a 2-ton killer whale jumping through a hoop on fire with a top hat on. Who's smarter, whales or humans? Right. So this, point. I mean, we can actually talk. We can, right? So you take positive reinforcement. Without it, I believe many changes fail. Because in the first change that you ever implement as a manager, you're going to have 5% of your team that follows you like that. It's the people that line up for cell phones when the new iPhone comes out.
Early adopters.
The 5%, they're the fast follow, or the early adopters, right?
Yep.
Fast followers are the next 15%, right? The early adopters and the fast followers, what's the biggest difference? The fast followers are watching. They're paying attention to, like, okay, they bought the iPhone. Is this going to be a big failure? Are they fools? Or are they the wisest people on earth? They're paying attention. And so when you have adopted change as a leader, where you're trying to change things for the better as a leader, you got to be out there and you got to be telling the first 5% that start doing this stuff, that's a fantastic way of living out our mission.
Yeah.
Because the 15% that are watching, that are on the fence, you got to let them know you're on the fence. You need to be on this side of the fence. And as a coach, that's just coming out and communicating job well done in a specific and very missional way.
We've taken this thing full circle, and I appreciate the way that you connected this all the way back. It comes back to the cornerstone of the mission. I want to wrap up here, as we always do, with a practical perspective that, someone who is listening, someone who is watching, can take an idea back, one small thing, and apply to integrate everything that we've talked about here today. And I know in the book that you have a pre-hierarchy action plan, a post-hierarchy action plan. When you think about application, what is one small thing that someone who is watching or listening can do right now to begin to move forward and make progress on their own hierarchy of team needs journey?
Yeah. What keeps you up at night about your team? That's probably a dysfunction. In Patrick Lenciosci's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And we address how to fix it in my book.
What keeps you up at night? It's a really good one. Ponder that. Write on that.
Yeah, my book makes monsters go away.
Yeah. Ponder that, write on that. And then to that point, where can you get the book? For those who are watching or listening, where can you get the book? Because this book is a Sherpa that's going to lead your team to the peak, to the precipice of the hierarchy of team needs. Where can someone who's watching or listening find this book now?
Yeah, the Amazon has got the book available for sale today. You'll actually see a couple of books up there, mostly written by James Robert Lay, and then right in that same leadership category, you'll see this one as well.
No, get both. That'd be fun. That'd be fun to do maybe a book club. We'll do
bundle it up.
We'll do both of these books together, and because it's about continuously learning and growing, and the way that you have to, particularly as a leader in today's age of exponential change. The way I look at wisdom is the Socratic perspective of I know nothing. And that's becoming even more abundantly clear each and every day as I learn from others just like you. And I really appreciate the perspective that you've shared. I've learned a lot. And for those that want to continue to connect with you, to keep learning from you, they can get the book obviously off of Amazon. But what's the best way for them to reach out, say hello, connect with you, Scott?
LinkedIn is a great way to reach out to me. I'm also an employee at ServiceR Consulting, and there's time you can book on my calendar at that website, servicerconsulting.com.
Connect with Scott, learn with Scott, grow with Scott. Scott, thanks for joining me for another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. This has been a lot of fun today, buddy.
It's been my pleasure.
As always, and until next time, be well, do good, be the light.